Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Powerful on Purpose. And this is where we have conversations with amazing women who are really using their story to build their business and change the world for good. And as I always say, we definitely need more of that in the world. And today, our guest is no exception to that rule. With me, I have Lisa Andrea, and she is an emotional transformation coach with Ladies Who Leap Coaching. She uses multiple methods to work with the unconscious mind to recover the mental blocks that hold us back. And I love this part. She helps us release the bag of rocks that we carry around because so many of us are not only carrying our own bags, but all the bags that came before us, right? So very valuable skill. And Lisa also had her own journey, which led her down this path to being an emotional transformation coach. And we're going to hear a little bit about that today. So welcome, Lisa.
Thank you, Leslie. It's very nice to be here with you.
Well, thanks. It's great to have you. So I always like to start with what's your story of why you're doing what you're doing and why you're so passionate about that?
I'll tell you, I never would have thought, I didn't even know what a life coach was until I reached a point where I wanted to help other women. So I'll start with the fact that my whole childhood, I grew up like an ugly duckling, those ugly, nerdy, thick glasses, really smart, walking around like that, getting picked on, getting things, or being completely invisible. So my story started with feeling like I had to shapeshift or change who I was in order for people to like me. And so that was my story. And that affected everything from relationships, the marriage that I had, where I allowed through the people pleasing that I allowed to live somebody else's life instead of my own. I did find out and knew that I wanted to be a broadcaster. Didn't end up going to college for that when my mom went through hoops to get grants and get me going into a college and get in there to major in journalism. But after that, a summer in California where I got contacts, I grew my hair, I had dates for the first time. I equated, and again, I didn't figure this out for like 15 years, but I equated even going back to college as going back to being the nerd again. I thought I had broken free of the nerd. I was getting dates. My whole life was solved. Everything was great. And it wasn't. And getting into a marriage, 11 years into our relationship, while I was married with him, realizing I completely lost myself, just woke up one day and I was like, I don't even know who I am. I'm doing everything that he wants to do, all his hobbies, all his friends. I lost my friends. I lost my hobbies. And I started on a journey with therapy and I went with him in some ways. I went on my own. And then again, I thought I was fixed, got a divorce, thought I was fixed. Oh, I'm not a people pleaser anymore. And went right back into it in the next relationship and then the next relationship. And then had friends that were also not treating me well. So it actually took retiring, going back to work and being in a job where the boss made me cry twice. I was in my 50s. I was like, if this is not a catalyst for me to just change who I am, I'm allowing somebody else to affect my emotions. How do I get out of this? And that started me on the journey. It really was catapulted because I feel that my own healing is the way that I'm helping my clients. And my healing really started when I started learning how to be more of a life coach. So in December of 2022, I took 6 months off. It was actually October of 2018. I'm sorry. I took 6 months off. The guy made me cry. I said, that's it. I don't have a job, which is unheard of. You don't quit a job when you don't have a job when you're in corporate. I said, that's it. I went to my financial advisor. I said, you find me some money because I need to take some time off and find myself again. And I would love to reinvent myself, find a different job. That's when somebody told me about life coaching. And I was like, wow, if I had known about this in my 30s or years earlier, it would have been much easier. But then again, that's my path in life. I had to have the lessons learned of making the mistakes and having the experiences. And that's when I got my coaching credentials, started coaching, had to go back to work, demoted myself on purpose. I tried to get in other fields, but it just didn't work out. So I went back into the same field, but I demoted myself in a company that I used to work with or work for. And it was more of a support role, took a lot of less money. I made a lot less money, but emotionally, it was much better for me. And I did that for another 4 years till I could fully retire. And then guess what happened? I went to go back to coaching. My whole website was gone. And it was completely gone. So now I got to reinvent myself again and work with a coach and came up with Ladies Who Leap. And then I got breast cancer. It was like, all these things happened in my life, but I really am happy that they all happened. I'm now realizing that being that little girl who was picked on and understanding how much that can affect you in your unconscious mind, right? Things that are stored, things that happen, things that people say and that they turn into beliefs are really where what shapes us as we grow older and as we get, into adulthood. And it was just really exciting once I've got through the breast cancer journey and really got into my coaching work and making myself, even changing my name, emotional transformation coach, because I work on mostly women, work with mostly women, and I transform them. I release those, like you said, those a bag of rocks that they're carrying around. And it actually, because you can't, I mean, we'll get into about building confidence and why it's so important. But to me, releasing all that baggage is huge in having you be able to go forward in a completely different way.
Sure. No, that's great. And I think that speaks to so many women's journeys, right? And this idea too of reinventing ourselves multiple times.
Yeah. That's what the leap is all about, right? Ladies who leap, because leaping out of your comfort zone is where the growth happens. So when you take that first step, you're really, really scared and you're like, I don't know what's going to happen, but something is calling me to do this. Even if it's just helping a highly autistic child to be able to communicate and you're trying to find new ways. I mean, I have my podcast and I heard that story of that woman and it really affected me. Any story, any leap that you want to take, it's so important. And in the work that I do with my clients, that baggage, those bag of rocks is quietly running your life behind the scenes. So when you release that, which can come from before you're 7 years old, childhood wounds, and even seemingly somebody could have said something to you, your parent could have said something to you that's really not bad, but it did create a belief inside of you and it's just stayed with you for the rest of your life. It could be past lives, could be generational. We know that what happens through generations get passed on to us. All of those things become the rocks inside that bag that you carry around. Yeah.
Sure. Maybe you could share with us one of like the biggest rocks that you felt you had to release. I'm sure there's multiple, right? But maybe the one that sticks out when I ask that question.
So, I got my training on the breakthrough sessions that I do. And in the training, it's very intense. You have to do the breakthrough session on each other, right? We're here in the training. And so I'm going through her questioning me and all the steps, and I'm getting to the point where she's looking for my greater problem, right? And I hear my unconscious mind say to me, I don't love myself. And I was like, I'm sorry, why wouldn't I love myself? Everybody loves themselves. How shameful. And I was so ashamed. I leaned in and I whispered, I don't love myself. And then I lost it, right? I was crying. I was like, oh my God, how shameful. The woman who was training also was so excited that she got to my root problem. She goes, jumps up, goes over to the training people. I think I got to a root problem. And here I am just like bawling my eyes out. That was for me. It's emotional because it was the catalyst. And then I realized when she released it, we went through the process. I was like lighter. I was like, oh my God, how exhausting to completely every time you meet someone to change who you are and figure out, okay, what can I say so that they like me? What can I say so that the boy that I met or the guy that I met will want to, fall in love with me? Shape shifting, as I call it, for that. It was exhausting. And that was really the catalyst that started me on a really personal journey. As I learned how to help myself, I used that to help others.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Such a beautiful story. And I think you make a great point. So often our stories lead us to a journey where we can help other people.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. What's a maybe a client story or somebody that again had kind of that same epiphany you had, right? Of, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize like that was what was driving my behavior.
Yeah. I have a client. I mean, every one of them has experienced something to go, oh my gosh, why did I think that way? After they had the breakthrough session. And then the subsequent work of solidifying it, setting boundaries because other people treat you differently when you release that bag of rocks because you're talking differently and you're behaving differently. But this particular person was what she did was start focusing on herself. So when she would make decisions in the past, it was what does my spouse want to do? What do my kids need? What does my work need? It wasn't about what do I want? What is it that I want to do? And so after that, she was just like, I'm doing what I want to do. And if I don't want to do that, I have no problem saying no. And if they don't like it, I don't care. And it also made the client feel comfortable with being alone. Some women say, if I'm alone, people are going to judge me. If I'm not in a relationship, I'm going to get judged. If I'm by myself, how can I be by myself? I don't necessarily like my own company. But guess what? When you love yourself and you clear that bag of rocks and all that baggage that tells you all these negative things about yourself, you like yourself. You like to be with yourself. Shoot, I'll say no simply because I just want to sit home with my dog, eat my favorite food, and watch my favorite TV shows. And I'm like having a great time.
Right? Yeah. I think this saying no is such an interesting conversation because we get pushback, right? When we start saying no. And somebody recently asked me to do another woman. I said no. And there was stunned silence, right? And then later there was these little comments, well, have fun, whatever you're doing. Cause I didn't say no, I'm doing anything. I just said no, like I'm busy, right? And so I think it's always a struggle when women start saying no because we're so used to saying yes. And then we get pushed back, not only internally, right? From the outside world going, well, wait a minute. That's not you. What's wrong with you?
Yeah. And what you're doing is you're trying to validate your decision. So you're saying, okay, I'll tell them why I don't want to go so that I can let them know and let them feel the validation of why I don't want to go or why I don't want to do this thing or why I don't want to buy this thing, whatever it is, when you can just say no. Now, again, you can give them the reason, especially if they're good friends and, I've got a conflict, or you can say, I really don't want to go out tonight. I really just want to stay home. I want to be with myself. That should be answer enough. And that's another thing. When you become more aware of how you are being, which is also part of the work I do, and how people view you and how you view the world and how you view your friends, just awareness is raised. Then when people say things to you, you go, yeah, I don't like that. It's not in alignment with how I feel about myself. That person's not somebody that I like how they're talking, and I'm going to let them know. So the boundary setting is easier. And also, you can make decisions. If before we work together, when let's say your partner said something and you let it go, you go, well, it's not really that great, but I want to keep everything nice and I want to raise any, I don't want to make any big trouble. And then after you go, well, wait a minute, that's not a nice thing to say. And I'm going to feel calm enough where I can talk to that person and go, let's sit down and talk about how you treat me. And if the person isn't willing to try and make changes themselves, then you have to make your decision as to how you want to go forward. But guess what? It's the best thing for you. We make that decision the best thing for you.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Um, so what piece of advice would you give to your younger self?
That's a good question. I guess I would say you're really perfect and wonderful just the way you are. Everybody's unique. Nobody's perfect. And you're never going to be perfect because it doesn't even exist. That's the reality. So just love and accept yourself just the way you are.
Right. Yeah. And I think that gets so hard, especially on the online world, right? Because we're bombarded with what we should look like, what we should do, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I remember because I was born tongue-tied, where your tongue is stuck, on the bottom and they had to cut it. Yeah, it's kind of unique thing. And my mom used to make the joke because I'm very I talk a lot. I'm very, have a lot of energy. And she would say, yep, we cut her tongue and she's never stopped talking since. So consequently, as you can imagine, that created a belief in me. And she didn't do it in any way, if anything wrong. My mom was a great, great mom and great person. But it did put that belief in me that, "Oh, I talk too much. I need to curb what I say. I need," and it really started that whole journey of don't talk about yourself too much. And then it was interesting because in that same session where I figured out I don't love myself, they ask one of the things we do is we elicit values, the values that you wanna live by. Before the breakthrough sessions, it's different than after. The word small came up in my mind, and I said, "I don't know what that's about." And she wrote it down. And over time, I thought, "Oh my gosh, I was playing small." Before I released the baggage about loving myself, the word small came up. I had no idea what it meant. No, it was that I was playing small. I didn't want to overshine the person I was with or the friend I was with because they wouldn't like me anymore.
Right. Well, and your
And that was
mom had
a belief.
also said you were small, right? So that internal programming of I'm still small and carrying that out as a bigger person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't rock the boat. The same thing, when I grew up in the 60s and 70s, your mother, if you said something wrong, looked at you from across the table or something, and it could just, "Oh my god, if looks could kill," and you were like, "Oh, I just said something wrong." So I was so cognizant to that, and it just really she again, nothing that she did on purpose. It's just something that I know that just solidified in my unconscious mind. And that thought and that experience, even after 7 years of age, we call them as subsequent events. So there is something else that was stored in your unconscious mind, and your unconscious mind is an amazing file cabinet. And so other events trigger things because the same thing comes up again that, oh, she's talking too much, so let me make her believe that she needs to be small. And it just keeps coming up and it keeps creating situations in your life, experiences, people that continue to perpetuate that same belief.
Yeah. And it's so easily done on the parenting side, right? Because we're carrying on some of that language we were taught, passing it on. And so, yeah, it just becomes sort of a perpetuating thing.
But yeah, that's why I'm saying a lot of when I go through the exercises with people and I tell them to put their conscious mind on vacation during this particular exercise and let their unconscious mind just say whatever comes out. A lot of them, it's passed down through generations.
Sure.
It's
Yeah.
things that were said even in the womb, things that were said in the womb that you can hold and continue to perpetuate. Shoot, I had a client that had migraine headaches every single day since 10 years old. And when I did herb clearing, they went away. And she was in her 50s. So there's that whole mind and body connection, right? They
Absolutely.
say resentment, holding in all of these, carrying around that bag of rocks can get stored in your body as much as in your mind and then cause illnesses. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been super fascinating. And I know you have a free gift for our listeners. So I'm going to let you go ahead and explain what that is, what they would experience during that.
Well, if you go to leapwithconfidence.com, I have it's 3 videos. You can listen to them as as you progress, but it's helping with when you make a decision to leap or do something different in your life, that it's videos that will help you to be able to do that and do it successfully. And then if you need my help, I'm here. I'm at ladieswholeap.com and there's a Let's Connect button and they can connect and actually make an appointment with me and we can just talk. Yeah.
Very generous offer. Yes. I'm sure there'll be listeners who want to take advantage of that. So thank you for coming on and sharing your knowledge with us.
Thank you, Leslie, for having me on. I love
Absolutely.
being able to help women, so this is another avenue to do it. Thank you.
For sure. For sure. And everybody else, be sure and subscribe because you don't want to miss more powerful conversations with women who are changing the world. And you heard it here.